Alright, let's open the right page. Number 7. The HeLa cells. In 1951, a woman named Henrietta Lacks walked into Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore hoping for relief from the pain caused by an aggressive cervical cancer. During her treatment, doctors removed a small sample of her tumor, a routine practice at the time, though consent wasn't asked for or even considered necessary in that era. What no one realized then was that this tiny sample would transform the future of medicine. When researchers placed Henrietta's cells into culture, they immediately noticed something extraordinary. Most human cells survive only a few days outside the body, but Henrietta's didn't die. They grew faster, stronger, and more reliably than any human cells ever observed. They divided again and again, seeming almost unstoppable. Scientists had accidentally discovered the first immortal human cell line. These cells, named HeLa after the first two letters of Henrietta Lacks' name, quickly became one of the most important tools in biomedical science. They were used to develop the polio vaccine, to study cancer behavior, to understand viruses, and even to test how cells react to zero gravity when NASA sent HeLa cells into space. Entire fields of research, including virology, genetics, and immunology, advanced faster because of them. But behind these breakthroughs, there was a hidden human story. For decades, Henrietta's family had no idea that her cells were being used in labs around the world, multiplying by the trillions. Her name wasn't shared with the public, and her contribution wasn't recognized. Meanwhile, companies were growing and distributing HeLa cells worldwide, making them one of the most widely used biological materials in history. It wasn't until the 1970s that her family finally learned what had happened, and only because researchers contacted them for genetic information. The revelation sparked debates about ethics, consent, and who truly owns biological materials once they leave the human body. Today, Henrietta Lacks is widely honored as a symbol of scientific progress and ethical responsibility. Her cells continue to be used in cutting-edge research decades after her passing. From cancer treatments to COVID-19 studies, HeLa cells are still helping humanity understand the most complex mysteries of life, making Henrietta Lacks one of the most influential individuals in all of medical science. Number 6. The Antikythera Mechanism. In 1901, a group of sponge divers exploring the waters off the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon something unexpected, the remains of an ancient shipwreck scattered across the seafloor. Among the statues, pottery, and treasures was a strange lump of corroded bronze and wood. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a fused mass of metal, barely recognizable after 2,000 years underwater. But when archaeologists began carefully examining the fragments, they realized they were staring at something truly extraordinary. Hidden inside that corroded block were gears, dozens of them, carved with a level of precision no one believed the ancient world was capable of. As researchers pieced it together over the decades, the truth slowly emerged. This wasn't just an artifact. It was a mechanical computer built in the 2nd century BCE. The Antikythera Mechanism could predict the positions of the sun and moon, track lunar phases, forecast solar and lunar eclipses, and even mark the dates of ancient athletic games like the Olympics. All of this was powered by more than 30 interlocking bronze gears, each one crafted with stunning accuracy. This level of engineering wouldn't reappear again until medieval clockmakers more than 1,000 years later. Understanding the device wasn't easy. For nearly a century, its purpose remained a mystery, mostly because the fragments were fragile, incomplete, and fused together by centuries underwater. It wasn't secrecy, it was simply the limit of early technology. Only with modern X-ray imaging and 3D scans did scientists finally uncover the full complexity of the machine, revealing inscriptions, hidden dials, and gear trains that had once moved with the precision of a modern watch. The discovery rewrote our understanding of ancient Greek science. It proved that they possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and mechanical engineering, knowledge that was lost for centuries after the device sank with its ship. Today, the Antikythera Mechanism stands as one of the greatest technological achievements of the ancient world, a reminder that history still holds secrets far more advanced than we once imagined. Even now, researchers are working to decode the remaining fragments, convinced that this ancient machine still has more to tell us. Number 5. The lost continent of Zealandia. For centuries, geologists debated whether a massive landmass once existed beneath the Pacific Ocean. Scattered islands like New Zealand and New Caledonia hinted that something larger might be hiding below the waves. Different teams argued over old maps, ocean samples, and unusual rock formations, trying to understand whether these islands were isolated fragments or the surviving peaks of something much bigger. It wasn't until the late 20th century that scientists began gathering more detailed evidence. Using deep-sea drilling, satellite mapping, and seismic surveys, researchers slowly uncovered a surprising pattern. Beneath thousands of meters of water lay a huge, continuous region of continental crust. It wasn't just ocean floor, it had the thickness, composition, and geological structure of a submerged continent. They named it Zealandia. Covering nearly 5 million square kilometers, Zealandia is almost two-thirds the size of Australia, yet more than 90% of it lies underwater. Millions of years ago, it may have stood higher above sea level, but shifting tectonic plates stretched and thinned it, causing most of it to sink slowly beneath the ocean. The idea wasn't immediately accepted, not because anyone was hiding it, but because the concept of a mostly underwater continent challenged traditional geological models. It took years of debate, new data, and better technology before the scientific community could agree on what Zealandia truly was. Finally, in 2017, the Geological Society of America recognized Zealandia as Earth's 8th continent, a vast hidden world that had been overlooked simply because almost all of it is underwater. Even now, much of Zealandia remains unexplored. Scientists are still investigating what parts once stood above water, how it formed, and what ancient ecosystems it might have supported. The discovery of Zealandia is a reminder that even today, our planet can still surprise us, sometimes with an entire continent hiding in plain sight beneath the waves. Number 4. The plastic-eating bacteria. Yes, you heard that right. In 2016, scientists in Japan stumbled upon a tiny bacterium doing something absolutely wild, eating plastic. The same stuff that's piling up in oceans and landfills everywhere. Imagine a microbe just cruising around on a discarded water bottle, breaking it down like it's a gourmet meal. It sounds almost unbelievable, like something out of a sci-fi story, yet it was sitting there in a recycling plant, quietly doing what no one expected. The discovery didn't make immediate headlines. There was no worldwide panic, no dramatic press conference. Instead, scientists took a cautious approach. They wanted to be absolutely certain of what they were seeing, how the microbe worked, how fast it could break down plastic, and whether its abilities were stable. For a while, the findings moved mostly through research papers and conference talks discussed by experts long before the general public realized how unusual this organism really was. Meanwhile, the world kept drowning in plastic waste, unaware that a tiny natural recycler had just been found. Here's how it works. The bacterium, called Ideonella secaiensis, produces a pair of special enzymes that break down polyethylene terephthalate plastic, the kind used in most bottles, into simple molecules it can actually digest. It basically takes something we consider almost indestructible and turns it into food. That's right, nature created a microscopic recycling machine. And while it's not a miracle cure for the plastic crisis, this discovery opened a door scientists never expected, the possibility that biology itself could help us clean up one of the biggest environmental problems on Earth. Number 3. The hidden plague of microplastics. In the 1990s, scientists studying the ocean started noticing something strange. Fish, plankton, and even tiny marine creatures were turning up with microscopic specks inside them. At first, researchers assumed it was sand, or natural debris, or just harmless particles drifting through the water. But when they looked closer under the microscope, the truth hit hard. These specks were pieces of plastic, tiny fragments, nearly invisible, but everywhere. The discovery shook marine biologists. These microplastics weren't just floating on the surface, they were working their way into the entire food chain. Shrimp ingested them, fish ate the shrimp, and eventually, those plastics made their way onto human plates. The ocean wasn't just polluted, it was slowly becoming a global plastic soup. But the world didn't learn about this all at once. Early research moved quietly through scientific papers and conferences as experts tried to understand how widespread the contamination really was. There wasn't a cover-up, but there was caution. Scientists wanted solid evidence before making bold claims, and industries were slow to react to a problem that was just beginning to reveal its scale. By the time the issue reached the mainstream, microplastics had already spread to every corner of the planet: the deep sea, Arctic ice, riverbeds, even the air we breathe. Today we know the oceans are full of them, but those first researchers who spotted the microscopic fragments realized they were looking at the beginning of a crisis that would take decades to fully understand. Number 2. Gene drives in insects. In the early 2000s, scientists began working with a new genetic technology that felt like something straight out of science fiction. It was called a gene drive, a method that could force specific genes to spread through entire populations of insects, especially mosquitoes. The idea was bold: stop deadly diseases like malaria by altering mosquitoes so they could no longer transmit the parasite. At first, the results were astonishing. In carefully controlled lab tests, the modified genes spread through mosquito populations far faster than normal inheritance would allow. Within just a few generations, an entire group could carry the engineered trait. For the first time, it looked like humanity might have a tool powerful enough to reshape entire ecosystems. But with that power came enormous concern. Scientists knew that once a gene drive was released into the wild, there was no easy way to pull it back. The ecological ripple effects were unpredictable, affecting predators, pollinators, and food webs in ways no one could fully map out. So early discussions around gene drives were cautious, deliberate, and often tense. Researchers debated their ethical limits, governments asked tough questions, and global organizations began drafting guidelines before anything could move forward. Although the research was not hidden, much of the early work happened in tightly monitored labs and policy meetings, far from public attention. It simply wasn't ready for the spotlight, not until scientists understood the risks well enough to talk about them openly. Today, gene drives are still being studied and debated. Some see them as a life-saving breakthrough, others worry they could reshape nature in ways we don't yet understand. What's clear is this: few technologies have ever given humans so much power over the natural world or demanded so much responsibility in return. Number 1. Lake Vostok microbes. In the coldest place on Earth, Russian scientists made one of the most mysterious discoveries ever, a hidden lake buried beneath 2 miles of Antarctic ice. They called it Lake Vostok, and it had been sealed off from the world for more than 15 million years. No sunlight, no oxygen, no contact with the surface, just complete isolation deep below the ice sheet. When researchers finally drilled down and collected samples, what they found shocked everyone. Signs of microbial life, tiny organisms, or at least their genetic traces that appeared to exist in total darkness under crushing pressure. It felt like discovering life on another planet, except it was right here on Earth. The idea that microbes could survive in such extreme conditions opened the door to new possibilities about where life might exist elsewhere in the universe. But here's where things became complicated. The results didn't go public all at once, not because of a deliberate cover-up, but because the science was difficult and the risk of contamination was extremely high. Teams took the necessary time to secure their samples, validate the findings, and carefully review all related documents, distinguishing what genuinely came from the lake from what might have been introduced during drilling. And with multiple countries involved in Antarctic research, the discussion sometimes moved slowly, creating the feeling of secrecy even when the work simply required caution. By the time the world finally heard the full story, Lake Vostok had already become a scientific legend, a reminder that some of Earth's most alien environments are still hidden beneath our feet, waiting for someone brave enough to reach them.